ceremony where we selected just a couple of veterans to be a token representation. I know we couldn't get them all, but we will do all the veterans through the VFW during Veterans Day, so there will be a ceremony for them specially. But I wanted to actually present you with a plaque that we had for all the Vietnam veterans that are there. I'm sorry you couldn't make it the first time. We missed the pomp and circumstance, but nonetheless, your service is definitely appreciated, and your heroism is well deserved. So I'm going to walk down to you and present this to you. Thank you. Armando, thanks, brother. Appreciate it. Thank you. Did you have something you wanted to say?
No, all I can say is thank you very much. And,
Good job.
bring back memories.
Good job.
Finally.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Okay.
All right. Thank you. We always like those happy times. That's always great to be a part of that. All right. Next, we do have a item 5. We have a proposed amendment to Chapter 92 Sewer and Chapter 112 Water of the Code of Caroline County. And Mr. Borchak, are you going to approach the item this evening?
Yes, again, good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Back in June, we did have a first reading of the proposed changes to the wording in both the water and sewer portions of the ordinances. Again, that being, sections were they? 112 and 52, 53. At any rate, we had the first reading and then went ahead and advertised for a public hearing to adopt those. It has been brought to my attention. I thought I'd mention here that in that advertisement, there is a typo on the page where it talks about the water and sewer connection fee increases. And the sewer portion is listed as current 7,000, proposed 8,500. Those two numbers are correct. However, when you look at that and you see the $1,000 for the increase, they obviously don't add up. So that was a typo in the advertisement. However, it was advertised, but with that discrepancy in it. The other thing that I want to bring to your attention, and was brought to my attention by Mr. Seeley, that when we converted the wording in the package that you gentlemen had before you and went and made the clean copy in Microsoft Office from the red line that we got from the attorney's office, that there was some wording that inadvertently seems to have disappeared. I do have that wording available to read if any of you care. It had to do with the language that addresses how and when the county would enter into negotiations for a separate agreement with a company who then would propose to resell water to county residents, and how the rate would be addressed for that. It doesn't affect the actual normal customer rates, only the wording on the specific negotiated contracts. But that seems to have not made it into your package. That being said, if you have any other questions, it does include the proposed levy the proposed schedule of rates and levies that we propose on implementing with this new ordinance, which does include a 5% user fee on the demand charges, the actual water uses, as well as the capacity fee increases that I mentioned on
Perhaps you could go ahead and read the
the wording.
the wording,
I can do that.
to make that happen.
The wording goes, the county may enter into contracts with any person, firm, or corporation, including but not limited to other localities, authorities, sanitary districts, or other public entities known as wholesale customers for the rendering of any unusual or extraordinary water service. Such contracts, unless with another locality, shall be only for the purpose of providing water for the use of inhabitants of the county. Any such wholesale customer shall pay rates established by individual contract. The rates or charges to be paid thereunder shall not be less than an amount which is fair and reasonable, taking into account the cost to the county of providing such service. That's the wording that is not in your package.
Okay, and then I guess my questions for county attorney with the typo and the wording missing, how do we approach that?
Well, with both were properly advertised, and so the board can go ahead and hold the public hearing because the actual amount for the rate increase was advertised. I mean, just the fact that the math was, done incorrectly in the next column doesn't negate the fact that everybody was put on notice what the new proposed rate will be, has properly been advertised. And since Mr. Borchak has just read into the record what the wholesale language would be in the proposed ordinance, and the fact that the wholesale provision would be considered by the board, again, was properly advertised, the board can go ahead with the public hearing. The public have been.
And that wording would not have been in the advertisement anyway.
Right.
Just
But the fact that the wholesale terms would be discussed tonight were advertised,
Okay,
so.
all right. Thank you so much. All right, board members have questions? All right. With that being said, we can proceed with the public hearing. All right, at this time, we'll proceed with the public hearing of proposed amendment, Chapter 92 Sewer and Chapter 112 Water of Caroline, the Code of Caroline County. At this time, public hearing is now open. Are there any citizens who would like to address the board on this proposed amendment? Are there any citizens who would like to address the board on this proposed amendment? Are there any citizens who would like to address the board on this proposed amendment? Hearing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed. Okay, we have questions of staff or attorneys?
I do,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
You can start off, that's fine.
We have one acronym still in here that I still don't know what it is. The POTW. We talked about this before.
It's a publicly owned water, what are the? It's
Public.
POTF, is it?
POTW.
Publicly owned treatment works, which would be the facilities that we own as a county.
Okay, because that's, nowhere in here does it tell me that. It drives me insane to look at them and go, okay, what does that mean? Okay.
Can we have that added to the list of definitions?
All right, anything else?
Motion in order, Mr. Chairman.
That's fine.
All right, I make a motion that we accept the proposed amendment as presented by staff with the changes outlined.
Second.
Motion made and proper second that we remove approval of the amendment. And proper second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same. All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Jim.
that. All right, next item, unfinished business, the update on the connection to the Caroline Pines subdivision to county water system.
All right, as you know, we have been in the process of having our consultant move ahead with the design on the connection to Caroline Pines to get it to a point where we could actually get a more precise cost estimate to present to you so that we'd have a number that would be more realistic to consider. The consultant has been doing that. In the time that he's been preparing the plans, we've also been looking at some possible alternatives that might cut back on the cost. One of the things that we've looked at and evaluated is the method that we were initially planning to cross the railroad tracks with. And we've been in discussions with CSX and also VDOT to present them with a new proposal that we have, and both parties seem to be agreeable, so that we're pursuing the design on the basis of a different method of crossing the railroad tracks, which is cheaper and will also probably take less time to get permitted through CSX. It's a much simpler way. So when all is said and done, we initially were looking at a proposed estimate of $2.6 million. And in looking at the construction estimate that we have now, based on better information, complete survey, all of that, we are down to 2.155 million, which is about a little over a 17% reduction from what the original cost estimate had been. The plans at this point are to the point where they actually can be finished in a fairly short time to be submitted for the permitting to both VDOT and CSX. And so at this time, we want to present this to you gentlemen so that you're aware where we are in the process and have the opportunity to look a little further into methods that you might be considering as far as funding the project itself. Like I say, we're down from 2.6 to just under 2.2 at this time. The only thing that is not included in either of these estimates would be anything that's required for negotiation of easements. And I think we can have some discussions as to what we might consider for those negotiations amongst staff and the board, and come up with how much hard money and how much soft money that might entail. There are a number of ways of approaching that. But this is simply the construction costs that we have now.
Okay. We certainly appreciate that information, and we'll certainly, I'd just like to remind the board, this is certainly a project that we've been looking at for many, many years, and we have been able to put together a package that has come in even, 17% at least below, because now's the right time to do it, and it makes sense. So, again, the situation for the folks in Caroline Pines, there's about 1,000 people who live there, as much as the town of Bowling Green, for an example. So we know that there's a large segment of people who need viable drinking water options. So, I guess if board members has questions of Mr. Borchak. Sure, Mr. Vice Chairman.
Mr. Borshak, I just wanted to check, and I was just trying to make sure you've got in this fiscal spreadsheet you've got for the construction estimate,
Yes,
you've got 15,500 feet of PVC piping, and that's a little less than 3 miles. Is that the distance between Ruther Glen Road and the entrance of Caroline Pines?
that takes it down to the entrance. Then there's another section that takes Caroline Pines itself into consideration.
Okay, right.
Right.
But I mean, the reason I ask is I was driving by there looking for something else, and it sure seemed like it was longer than 3 miles, but,
They've done the surveying, so
okay.
I'm trusting them.
All right, well, I just want to double check, because,
Yes.
well, you know how it is when you're looking for something and driving, it seems like it takes forever, and it seemed like it was longer than 3 miles, but okay. That's the one, and the other one is, we don't have any idea what the easements would possibly cost, because we haven't approached those
We haven't
folks yet.
approached any of the landowners, no. Now, we have approached them when we were actually doing the interest survey, you know, to see if any of them would be interested, even in the possibility of connecting at some future point. So we at least have a kind of a read on how positive or otherwise they might be towards the project. So I think we at least have a little feel of how negotiations might go. But until we decide to move ahead, there are a few ideas that I think we can discuss as to how to approach that and maybe keep the actual hard costs to the county at a minimum.
Okay, and I think you're here for the closed session tonight, so
Yes.
we may have something to discuss in closed session about that. Okay, thank you, sir, that was all I had.
All right. Ms. Seeley, you have any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, a couple. Number one, I've talked to some folks that live in Caroline Pines, and half of them say their water is okay.
Half?
The back half say their water is fine, and that was
Okay.
their number, not mine.
Well,
I'm telling you what I was
I think you need to be
told.
careful with your facts. We have the property owner association representative here,
And that's,
and I think that's not even near the truth. So I think, you're gonna say half. I'm gonna have to call you out on this.
Okay.
Because you're gonna have to have your facts.
And
I
I'm
don't
saying that
believe
I
you.
think that there should be some independent testing of all the waters, all the facilities in there to get an idea of what we're talking about. Because if you take water back there and folks don't want to join or they don't pay the connection fees, we're the ones, the taxpayers, the rest of the county is the one that's going to be responsible for paying that debt. At this point in time, we don't know what the easement cost is going to be, and some of the VDOT estimates that I saw when I was on GWRC, that the easement cost more than the construction costs. Some of the folks that were along the way didn't want to connect to the water system according to the survey that was presented us 3 or 4 months ago.
Some did not.
And
some
they-
did. Yes.
And those
Down
that
Ruther Glen
don't,
Road.
and what will that do to assessments when water crosses those properties? And that's some of the concerns folks have when we talk about easements and putting water across their property is, what does that do to my assessment since I now have access? And I think we've not answered a lot of those questions. The other is the homeowners association by state code is instantiated to provide water. And I think we need to look at the homeowners association to do what they're entrusted by the state to do, which is provide water. It's not in our path currently, and it's not in our plan to go down that way with water. And I'm just reluctant in these times. We're not building things in the county that we need infrastructure-wise, and we're going to build a water system. I'm not taking away that folks down there need water. I think there are other ways to go about it. But we've canceled a number of projects, and we've had a number of folks laid off. This is debt we're going to incur. It's payments we're going to have to make. And in 2013, we have a $2 million step up in paying principal costs that we've already incurred because we're just paying interest. And I'm looking at what those costs are going to be overall to the county. Those are my concerns. It's not that folks don't need water, but I think there are other ways to do this.
Okay, Mr. Akers?
Well, my response to Ms. Seeley is, don't keep them to yourself. Share those other thoughts with us so that we can show the people in Caroline Pines as to what they can do. I am a firm believer there are certain things in life you have to have. Water, I believe, is one of them. And the people in Caroline Pines, they have been here on several occasions and have stood at this podium here and have indicated to us they do not have adequate water supply. We had one couple that lives in Lake Caroline Pines that came and showed us pictures of towels and things that they have dried off with, and you saw the results of those towels. I mean, it was just nothing but rust and all of those other nasty things that we saw. The people in, I say the same thing for the people in Caroline Pines as I've always said for the people in Lake Caroline and Lake Landor and the others in my district. They pay taxes, and they pay taxes in this county for many, many years. And I believe when the need is there for them to look to the county to help, I think we have an obligation to help. If in any way possible, we can do that. I believe this is the way we can help the people in Caroline Pines. Secondly, it appears to me that the last presentation that I heard was that the system was basically going to pay for itself through connection fees, even additional development, commercial development in that area, as well as homeowners. And thirdly, as far as, and you say that, I'm not sure whether those two are the ones that are representing Caroline Pines Homeowner Association, but do you not have some means of special assessments on homes that, let's say, for instance, there are people that say, no, I'm not going to pay the upfront fee. Can there not be special assessments? Lake Caroline certainly has a means of
become their water
affording special assessments.
We become their water
We become their
system,
water, we put a special assessment on them.
and that's basically what happened.
We get paid.
Right. Yes, sir. My name's John Bowers. I'm the Vice President of
Okay.
the Property Owners Association. And to address Mr. Silly's concern, the way we envision the project, the county comes down, hooks to the system, everybody pays the $2,800 connection fee. We simply go out of the water business and the county takes over the business. This isn't going to be an option where there's two lines going to people's houses and they can either buy county water or either have an individual well or for us to provide the water. Everyone goes on the system.
I
Otherwise,
guess
they
my question there is, what is the homeowners association's responsibility in all this, since they have been put in the position by the state to be responsible for water, not the county? Because when that subdivision was actually created, the Board of Supervisors then approved it under the instantiation of a homeowners association that actually took charge of that water system. And now what you're saying is for $895,000, which is what the connection fees today would be, you want to turn over basically to us a $3 million water that we're going to pay $3 million for and then pay users' fees, which don't right now cover capital costs. And the commercial that we've approved to go down 652, we're not charging them connection fees because the county's saying they're so important to us that we're not going to charge that amount of money to them. So what I see is commercial moving down, us forgiving those, and the debt that we incur is debt that every citizen in the county has to pay.
which, and as Mr. Rozelle has indicated, we're all taxpayers. Some of us have been here for a few years. Some of us have been here for many years. No one here was here when the system was created 40 years ago. Right now, it not only goes to the quality of the water, which I would agree that the vast majority of the homeowners do not have quality water, and we've got fire hydrants that I've been told are not going to fight fires because we don't have an adequate supply. The existing system was built 40 years ago. We've got a system of wells that go into a central line around that simply doesn't have any treatment or filtering system. It was a marginal system at the time, and the Homeowners Association is simply without the funds without the ability to come up with the funds to put a central treatment facility in and create our whole system. As members of the county, as citizens of the county, what makes sense is to tap into the county system. We're willing to pay our fair share, both as connection fees and as user fees. There's no question about that. The Board of Directors of the Property Owners Association is and has always been unanimously supportive of this project. We supplied some funds to get the initial evaluations done, And the vast majority of the property owners are supportive of this project, because the picture that I remember so vividly was a picture from the bathtub tap, and what looked like was coming out was a dark tea. And people don't want to bathe their children in it. They don't want to have use that as their kitchen water supply. It's simply, it's an inadequate old system. We don't have the funds individually to create a whole new internal system and put in 3 or 4 new wells and a water treatment facility when the county has surplus capacity right there at Carmel
Well,
Church,
well,
and it's 3 miles away.
I don't know if you were here for this, but surplus capacity isn't exactly what we've got. That's one of the other concerns. You know, we're over our capacity currently. I mean, that's
Well,
from
that's
our
not
utility director.
quite true, Mr. Seeley. I think if you consider the other wells that we have that are offline waiting to go online, that capacity would increase. You familiar with those?
I'm just going by what our utility director's given us.
Right, do you know we have other wells ready to go online, waiting to go
I
online?
know that we have other wells that we're waiting to get approved by
Okay,
the health department that are going to take some time to get approved.
okay.
Can I ask a quick
Sure.
question? Mr. Borshak, I see Mr. Rogers is here, and normally I would ask him this question, but I know he's probably giving you the answer already. So on the $2.5 million originally, what was the debt service to the county?
Good question.
If you want, I'll ask Mr. Rogers, because I know he can do that right off the
Yeah,
top of his head.
We had that. I did not bring that spreadsheet along. Do you have that spreadsheet, Courtney?
But you can just yell the number out from there, because I know you can figure it out. $2.5 million at 3%.
Well, it's not 2.5, we haven't bought right-of-ways yet.
Well, I'm just trying to get in.
I'm a little behind on this project, so
Just tell me, because I know you got this kind of stuff in your head. Just tell me what the debt service is. Head calculator, same thing. What's the debt service on $2.5 million that we're probably going to borrow for 30 years? I know. I'm just trying to get an idea of where he is, because Mr. Borshak has some numbers that say what he expects us to get every month.
I ran it at 4.5%, 155,000
$155,000.
a year.
That's just the debt service.
Right.
So 155,000, 30 years, 4 million plus I owe 2 million, so it's like 6 million in there.
It's
Okay.
4.6 million.
4.6 million total. Okay, and Mr. Borshak, you can figure out what was the monthly or yearly amount we would get back from Caroline Ponds?
Okay, well, we were looking at, first of all, the connection fees that would come in. And again, I know there's been talk amongst the board as to the possibility of extending that over more than just
Right,
a single
right.
payment. So they would come in maybe over, 3, 4, 5 years,
5
whatever would be
years.
approved. And that would be the number of connections down there, about 350 homes. 360 homes.
I thought there were 630 houses.
There are that many properties, but
Oh.
not that many homes.
Okay, 300.
So about 360 homes
Okay.
at the 2,800, just for the connection fees, which would come in over the first several years. And then along with that, they were looking at the probability of, and they kind of escalated it up starting in the first few years with maybe 2 or 3 additional connections. And as you went out over the time of the 30 years, eventually working up to where I believe it peaked out at around 7 connections per year in there. So they were looking at additional connection fees coming in over the time in the community, as well as a few along the line that would be commercial properties. And that would all total up for the connection fee portions. But as far as the monthly user fee, you know, if we're talking about our current rates, where for a typical 4,000-gallon customer, you're talking about $21 as you go up, maybe $25 a month at our current rates for the 360 homes on a monthly basis.
That's the regular rate.
That's the regular rate. simply the regular rate, not including anything that you gentlemen might determine.
I took the 155,000 divided by 360 homes, and that's like $36 a month.
Okay,
So take the debt service. the whole-
debt service,
Assuming
the whole
that no
thing.
more houses came in and were built.
And assuming their slow rate of growth, which is what they projected. So
So from-
basically what we're saying is, without the easement cost, if each house in Caroline Pines paid $36 a month for water, we would break even.
Right, on the debt service,
Okay, on the debt service,
on the 2.5 million.
yeah. Okay, that's what, I mean, I've said, and I'm not gonna speak for the rest of the board, I've said I'd like to do something to help the folks in Caroline Pines. We just need to make sure it's neutral or revenue positive for the county. The other concern is your internal pipes, if they're, putting out water that looks like tea now, are they damaged? And if we run clean water through there, that's gonna be damaged too, or you don't really know?
I'd have to defer to the expert in that area, but I would say this, we have a lot of old wells, and the water comes out of the wells essentially untreated. We have a little bit of
Right.
treatment on some of the wells, but basically, if we get what I'd call mud out of one or two of the wells, and it goes into the lines, that's what comes out of the taps in people's homes. But my understanding is that, well, when the county took over the system, takes over the system, the wells are shut down, perhaps kept as a contingency for some possible later use, but this mud no longer goes into the system. We bring in the water from Carmel Church, which is clean, potable water, and over a period of a few days, it goes through the lines, and the mud that's in the system flushes out of the system. I defer to the expert on that.
Okay.
To expand upon that, if we were to proceed with this project, when we did actually make the tie-in, put the system into service, first thing we would do would be something that we normally do as an annual program in our own system, and that would be to flush out their entire system.
Flush the line.
The discoloration that they're getting now is a combination of a couple of things. Some of it is simply the iron that's in the water, and as he said, mud. They are actually, in some cases, stirring up and bringing sediment up, as well as the water. And of course, some of that will deposit out on the interior of the mains, so that when the initial use begins, that needs to be flushed out. Also, we would, our own water, part of the treatment that we do, we treat it with what is called a sequestering agent that actually coats out and lines the interior of the pipes with a substance to any of that dirt, corrosion, whatever you want to call it, that would remain in there after we flushed it. That would be kind of encapsulated between the pipe and the film that would form in there from the treatment process that we currently use in our own system.
All right. Okay, Mr. Popowich, I think you were next on the list.
Yes, sir. One question, for sure. What kind of lines are currently in the facility?
They've got a combination of lines, some of which are, I guess some of them are even galvanized.
I'm not sure. I don't.
Their newer lines are PVC.
Okay.
They do have some newer PVC lines. Some of the old ones are, I believe they have some transite in there, and some older iron pipes. And part of what was presented in the initial kind of financial evaluation
Hold on.
was adding an annual amount to replace that.
Okay. I guess let's go back to the iron. Is it ductile, or is it going to be your?
They, from the report that I read, I think they have some cast and some ductile.
Okay, so the cast is definitely going to be a
That-
problem. The transit will
Yeah,
be a problem.
that would be on the priority list of things to replace first.
Okay, and that would be a special assessment to their water bill, correct? If we went in there and fixed that.
I'm assuming that's how that would be handled, yes.
Okay. Yeah, because that's one of the concerns that I have, is we go in, we take over the system, we're taking over a system that's inadequate. I don't want to be responsible for the inadequacies in that system right off the bat. I don't think that's fair to the rest of the citizens in Caroline who are paying for water. So I think that's something that we're going to have to look at and find a cost analysis on up front, if we can do that. So we should be able to pay for the system over time, over the 30 years, and pay the debt service on it. Is there any possibility that we could get a little bit more upfront rather than the $2,800 fee? Because aren't we a little bit higher on that on some of the other stuff?
That would certainly be based on what you gentlemen would decide to do. I believe the way the ordinance is currently written, that's the number that's in there.
Okay. Okay. All right. And this is a question for you. Does the POA have any, can they guarantee any, I know we're going to be doing the billing or whatever, but can the POA guarantee the connection fees for us in some way? I don't know how that would work legally, but I'd like to see at least some responsibility of the POA as we start into construction.
I don't quite know how to address that. We are a POA of a very modest income community. We have a lot of blue-collar workers and retirees. We have, I think, about $50,000 in the bank right now. We should have, by the state code, probably over $1 million in reserves. Over the last 40 years, no fault of most of the people who are there now, there was not proper raising of the annual dues to cover increased costs. So I can't stand here today and say that we have, you know, a substantial amount of money in the six-figure and higher range to help support the project. We've we've provided some funding that we could for some of the initial studies, but we simply don't have the funds. The only way we could get the funds would be by a special assessment to our property owners, and that would be the same thing as you raising the connection fee. It's one way or the other that they would have to pay it.
Yeah.
In other words, the money would have to come from, we have 360 families essentially, and the money would have to come from their pockets, whether it's paid directly to the county or whether we levy a special assessment. Hopefully we can get that from our property owners and then pass it on to the county. It's just one way or the other of getting the money from the property owners.
Yeah, I understand that. I guess what I'm getting at is that from a legal standpoint, if we have to sue 360 people, that's a little bit harder than suing one entity, which would be the property association as a whole.
Well, it's the way we have presented it to our property owners, if I might say that, is that on a date certain, after the line is run, the system becomes the property of Caroline County. And in order for people to receive water from that system, and that's their only source, our covenants preclude them from drilling their own wells. The lots aren't big enough for that.
I understand.
Each individual property owner will have to pay the connection fee on whatever time schedule that the board sets, whether it's 3 years or 5 years or even 7 years. The individual property owner has to pay that connection fee plus the monthly, whatever their water bill is, based upon their usage. So if the need comes to get more funds, it would be, I think, the proper way, the best way to do it is to bill the individual property owner and say, this is the cost for your water. And it's a sole source project. You know, people don't have an alternative to water. They need water. They need water from the taps for drinking, for food, for sanitary purposes, and it comes from the county, and they pay what the county bills them. And the property owners understand